Hello, everybody, and welcome to JTV. I'm thrilled to be joined by a regular of the show, a friend, my rabbi and mentor, Rabbi Manis Friedman. Thank you so much for making the time to join us here today on JTV again. Really appreciate it.
Good morning here.
And good afternoon here. I want to jump, as we did on our last session, we spent a bit of time talking about issues that are happening in the forefront of our minds in the Jewish world and Israel, and then spoke more generally about general life wisdom. And I'd like to do the same today. But I want to start off with talking about the current situation in Israel. The first question I have is, it's quite a morbid one, but I know your answer is going to be full of optimism and hope. I think there's an anxiety among many Jewish people, observant and non-observant, across the political spectrum, that what may unfold in Israel could be a tragedy. Now, I've learned from you, spent enough time learning from you, the importance of belief that in the goodness of God, and that it will be good, and think good and it will be good, to such an extent where I don't really indulge in those ideas anymore. And when I'm talking about a tragedy, I mean something like, God forbid, the destruction of Israel, that things could get really bad again. And we have a living memory of one of the most traumatic moments in Jewish history, just 80 years ago, the Holocaust, one of the worst events in human history, let alone Jewish history. And I think this is a really important point to address, that it's not enough just for us to hope that things are going to be okay, but I think we need to ground that in something real. And I sort of wanted to invite you to share with us good reason for belief that we're not going to see a repeat of history. I heard you once say, it might have been a year or two ago, that it sounded like you were saying the term "never again" wasn't just a slogan we came up with, but it was almost like you were saying it's a heavenly message. So I just wanted to ask you to elaborate on that, because I think a lot of people do have at the back of their mind, totally understandably, this fear that we could look at be seeing another tragedy down the line.
And wouldn't that be a tragedy? Imagine if we all thought like that. All right, so the first thing is, we don't want to weaken ourselves further by being pessimistic and by expecting the worst. That never helps. That's working against our purpose. But also logically, if we can be logical under these circumstances, you know, the analogy or the example of drawing a lottery, drawing lots, actually. You have 1,000 pieces of paper, and 999 of them say something positive like yes. One out of the 1,000 says no. Imagine if you draw at random, you draw out a piece of paper from this mix, and you come up with the no. Your first reaction is, wow, that's strange. How likely? So you put it back in, and you draw it again. And again you come out with the no. Now this is really getting mysterious. You do it a third time, and again it's a no. You do it 10 times in a row, and 10 times in a row you come out with the no. This starts to do something to your brain. If you are going to do it an 11th time, what do you now expect? So here's the question. Yeah. There are 999 yeses. There's only one no. What should you expect? Obviously, Of course. But because of the 10 experiences, the 10 disappointments, your brain is now going to say, come on, be realistic. It's going to be the no again. And, and it's called realistic. It's not at all realistic. Say, oh, it happened 10 times in a row. That's not realistic. The no is still unrealistic. The possibility or probability of coming up with a no, very, very slim. Mostly because you've already had it 10 times. The likelihood of it happening 11 times is as ridiculous as it happening the first time. But the habit of suffering, I don't know what else to call it. This is where we get disheartened, we get discouraged, and we're programmed to lose because you're expecting a no again and you think that's realistic.
But on what basis can we think that that mainly life offers up is going the what will manifest will be a yes? On what basis can we say that when there has been so much suffering and God runs the show ultimately? So it would seem that He's providing a very mixed bag of no's and yeses. So on what basis can you think that?
Well, how useful, sensible would it be to say Holocaust is the norm? Every day that there's no Holocaust is a miracle. That would be really morbid thinking, wouldn't it?
But anti-Semitism is the norm. Persecution has been the norm for 2,000 years.
Actually, survival has been the norm.
Also true.
Yeah, that is the real solid, reliable, consistent factor. We always survive. So it's not. We shouldn't even be doing that. We shouldn't be saying, "Well, how many times have we suffered, and how many times have we survived?" You're looking to survive. You're not looking to suffer. So, if you're looking for what's best and healthiest and most useful, it is far more useful to think we've survived everything. We're going to survive this too, rather than to say, "Here we go again." Take a deep breath because we're going down. No, that's not good thinking at all. And that's without faith. We do have faith. In fact, in 1948, what were we thinking? We didn't even have a decent gun. And we were going to take on the Arab world. And we did. And we won. So looking for precedents is one thing. Keeping your eye on the goal is another. Look, here's the sad thing. Of course, tragedy is always a possibility. The real problem today is that it's not necessary. We're not helpless, even physically. And the question is, with the tools we have, with the weapons we have, with the advantages that we have, why aren't we using them? Why is this war 100 days old? It shouldn't be. It needn't be. Whatever we did in 100 days, we could have done in 30 days. So the question is, what's stopping us from succeeding? How are we sabotaging our own success? That is not a scary thought. It's a very painful thought. Why would we do this to ourselves? To gain world approval, which we're not gaining? I think that's where we're stuck.
Hmm. Yeah, and I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about what our strategy needs to be, and what is the call of the hour as Jews and as people in Israel. But I just want to focus a little bit more on this point about. It sounded to me like when I heard you speak maybe a year or so ago that more than just it should be our frame of mind, but there's good reason, there's good philosophical grounding, historical grounding to think that we are back and we're back for good in the land of Israel, and that never again really was never again. Do you think there's something, some kind of evidence we can have to give our people a sense of just confidence in this is more than just a hope, and it's even more than just our strategy, but we know we're here?
Well, the reasoning is coming out of Gullus, coming out of exile, involves two stages: the Jew leaving the exile and the exile leaving the Jew. As far as Israel is concerned, physically, technically, we have left the exile. That was the argument. That was the celebration. All right, so now what? Well, now the exile has got to leave us. So we have now the opportunity, logically, physically, naturally, to be successful and to have the world's respect. But we keep missing the opportunities. Why do we do that? And it's not because we can't win. We can, and easily. And when you first heard that Israel was going to go in to clean up Gaza, how long did you think it would take? It's just Gaza. It's like,
Right.
it's not even a country. It's a neighborhood. How long will it take? All right, they have tunnels. Well, how do you handle tunnels? Use it against them. Trap them in their tunnels, and you've got them in the best circumstances for you. It's their weakness, not just their strength. And we didn't think it would take 100 days. Realistically,
I think
so
the army did say it's going to be a long war. They were saying that.
And that was very upsetting to hear. First of all, why make such a statement? Don't encourage the enemy. Tell them you've got a week and you're going to be finished. Right? So what is that? What is it that's holding us back from using the blessings that we now have? We're not living in ghettos in Poland. Doesn't that make a difference? And that famous story about the guy who dies in the flood and complains to God, "Why didn't you save me?" And God says, right. "I tried. I sent you a boat. I sent you a plane. You refused. So now that we have the boat and we have the plane, now what?" So it's not unrealistic to say we can win this easily. And the decent people out there in the world are puzzled. Right? What's your problem? This is not to discourage the army or even the politicians in Israel, but Yemen sent a few drones or rockets against American ships. American goes in there and blows up whatever. Did anybody ask how many civilians got killed?
I mean,
Nobody,
they say they were targeting military targets in Yemen.
nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody
Well,
cares.
of course, yeah.
So, so what is that? The United States telling America, please be careful with civilians,
You mean telling Israel?
telling Israel. What? I mean, the hypocrisy is so glaring,
Yeah.
and we're falling for it.
And even when we're not falling for it, we're getting hysterical, trying to state the obvious to people who just don't seem to want to hear it. It's almost a bit degrading.
Yeah, it's like we're apologizing for winning, but we've done this for 70 years.
Mm.
So it's time to not only be confident, but to be truly confident that we're doing the right thing.
Mm.
And stop feeling so timorous. Is that a good word?
Sure.
If we could just get through to a few people making the decisions, what is it, 3 people calling the shots there in Israel? Telling the army how to fight, where to fight, and when to fight. This is not normal. This is not how a war is conducted.
Do you not feel any sense of we don't know all the inner issues that they know in the army? It's challenging for us to make decisions on what would be the best strategy and operate. We just don't know. Is there not? Do you not have any concern about making statements in that light?
Yes, I've thought about that many times. I'm thinking, oh, they really know what they're doing. They're very smart, and you're going to see in a few days it's going to. No, it's not happening.
Mm.
It's getting worse by the day.
Yeah, yeah.
So what happened with that recent tragedy of 24 soldiers? They were in a building to blow it up and got blown up. Why were they in that building to blow it up? You can blow it up from the air. So it's not like they were trying to save the building. They were blowing it up in the most dangerous way possible by entering it.
Well, do we know why they did it? Maybe, I mean, they've been doing a lot of things from the air. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they were hostages. That I have no idea.
This is a bad habit for 70 years. Never fight an all-out war. It's always one step at a time, cautiously. And that's why it's taking 100 days. And whatever the reason is, we don't have the fortitude or the stomach to fight a war. And the best analogy is like a surgeon who needs to make an incision, but he hates the sight of blood. So he makes a tiny incision and stops. Then gets his fortitude back and he makes it further. And he cuts increments, torturing the patient. This is not the way to do it. So is it to our credit that we are so hesitant about war, about killing, about shooting? Yeah, it's part of our heritage. Jews and guns are not familiar with each other. But you got to do what you got to do. If you have an army and you're the head of the army and you're the commander in chief, you can't play these games.
There probably is still a risk of there probably is thinking that we have to keep America on side because they're supplying our arms, and I would just make an educated guess that part of the reason for strategy is to limit non-combatant casualties. And it sounds like you're saying that's a bad idea. And I do have to say, one does think about the great wars of 48 and 67, 73, when in some ways it seems way more existential. This is Hamas in Gaza, and yet we had less, and the victory was more dramatic.
Yes. And it is another distasteful aspect to the whole thing. We will be careful to avoid civilian casualties to the point that makes America happy. Like, how far do we need to go to avoid civilians? Ask the Americans. This is not good policy.
So what should the thinking be?
The thinking should be, do what you got to do to secure peace, and then apologize profusely.
But they're worried that America won't keep supplying arms if they think we've been super disproportionate.
I don't think that's true at all. And there are other places we can get arms from. That's, being held hostage by America in addition to Hamas.
Yeah.
That is not a good position to be in. No, I don't think America would withhold, because America has its own vested interest. It's not, purely lishma, out of shared goodness that they give us. There's a partnership here. America gets as much as it gives, really. So that is not a realistic fear. It's more like the need for approval than the need for weapons. It's more of an emotional condition. And this has been a weakness that we can't seem to shake. The need for the approval of the Western world, or whoever will give it. So it has to come back to, who are we really? We're the chosen people, and yet we need permission from America to defend ourselves?
We're the chosen people in exile. In spiritual exile.
It doesn't mean you have to die when you have the best army in town. You need their approval to do what you know is right. That is the worst form of exile. It's a mental exile. And we were talking about this, for the last couple of weeks. We're reading in the Torah about the Exodus, right? Moshe comes to Pharaoh and says, let go. Pharaoh says no. He comes back. Why do we need Pharaoh to say yes? Kill him. God wants to take the people out of Egypt. Why is God asking for Pharaoh's permission? There seems to be something mysterious is going on here. Because God keeps saying, wait, he is going to say yes. Well, if you can make him say yes, then get on with it. So, on the one hand, why do you need him to say yes? And on the other hand, if you do need him to say yes, then get him to say yes today. We need 10 different plagues. That's the condition of exile. Oh, Pharaoh said no. Now we're in trouble. What do you care what Pharaoh said? Why do we care what America says? Why do we care what Europe says? That place where there was a Holocaust? Why do we care what the UN says? It really makes no difference.
Are you trying to say we shouldn't have asked for Pharaoh's permission? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think that part of the lesson is Don't
Hmm.
do this.
Oh,
You
interesting.
know,
But it was at God's command to do it.
so God's purpose was for the benefit of Egypt, to
Hmm.
get them on the right track,
Hmm.
not just destroy them or punish them. And that's what happened in the end. Pharaoh says, yes, God is right and we are wicked.
Hmm.
But in terms of the Jewish people, the lesson is Pharaoh can say no 10 times. It doesn't matter. God is going to have it his way.
Hmm.
So it's embarrassing, really. It's embarrassing. We're the greatest people on earth. I mean, in all humility. Israel could be the center of the universe. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we crawl for approval? I keep fighting a war looking over our shoulders. Nobody else does that. You fight a war, you fight a war. You don't care what anybody thinks. That's called sovereignty. Do we not have real sovereignty? I'm afraid not. But even without sovereignty, do what's best for yourself. Just be selfish. So going back to your original question, do we have reason to be optimistic? We have every reason to be optimistic. God sent us a rowboat, and God sent us a helicopter, and God gave us all. What do you mean? Will we be saved? Just grab hold. And that is really interesting. When people say, why is God not helping? Why is this war dragging? Why are so many soldiers dying? Why is God not helping? On the other hand, how many rockets keep falling on Israel? And fortunately, no one was hurt. But that's not a miracle. How many rockets? It's mind. This is a miracle greater than any biblical miracle. For 15 years, rockets fall on Israel, and maybe two people got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of. I don't want to undermine this miracle, but a lot of them are obviously intercepted now through the Iron Dome. But yes, many aren't as well.
Yeah. Rocket landed. No one was home, so no one was hurt. How many times is that going to happen? And what are these toy rockets? I mean, Israel is a small country, but you can't miss all the time. So, is God helping? In the area where we need His help, He is helping. In the area where we should be helping ourselves, well, help yourself. I gave you the guns, I gave you the tanks, I gave you the planes. Now you want a miracle? We got to use nature where we have nature on our side, not look for miracles. Where we don't have nature on our side, then we need miracles, so they happen.
I think a lot of people, including religious people, think that there's always a balance between doing what is right for Israel, what we believe God wants, and also working within nature and having risk assessments. And so they often think that keeping America on side is part of the risk assessment, and it would be irresponsible to be, let's say, not to weigh up that concern. But it sounds like you're saying, forget that, throw that out the window, do exactly what you need to do,
Yeah.
and deal with the rest later. No?
Because realistically, Your friends will remain your friends, and your enemies will remain your enemies. Nobody is your friend because you are careful not to shoot a civilian. That's absurd.
But
It's not
maybe
true.
America isn't our friend. Maybe America won't be a loyal friend long term. You know,
So are we gonna be held hostage by that? It's paranoid. It's not realistic. America has a vested interest in the Middle East, and we are its only friend in the Middle East. It's not going to give that up because we shot a Palestinian for whom they care less than nothing. It's just not. It's not the case.
mm.
Look, I think everybody would agree with this. How many civilians have been killed so far on the Palestinian side?
I think it's
20,000.
around like 22,000, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, 20,000. The week after the massacre, if Israel had gone berserk and killed 20,000 Palestinians, everyone would have been fine with it. That not realistic?
Yeah.
The world was in the mood. And the world said, oh, yeah, get them. Who's them? Don't care. But, get your revenge. Go ahead. When it took 2 weeks, people were starting to waver. 3 weeks, everybody was against us. So it's not how many get killed. That's just realistically, not based on faith. So it is not a strategic concern. It's an emotional concern. It's like the dread of being the prime minister who did not get along with the American president. You don't want to be known or go down in history as the one prime minister that American presidents didn't like.
So what's it going to take to get out of this inferiority complex?
I think it's going to have to come from the people, not from the leaders. And it is happening, by the way. People are starting to say, enough of this.
Yeah.
Particularly after this recent event. You're in the building to blow it up. Blow it up from a distance. What are you doing?
Yeah.
The soldiers are starting to say that.
Yeah.
What was that all about? Go into the building and get blown up? No. It's bad strategy. Anybody who knows anything about fighting a war is puzzled. What's Israel doing? And yes, they have that, Israel probably has a real ace up its sleeve. It's going to pull off a really amazing... No, afraid not. So, will we survive? Of course we're going to survive. We can survive without a miracle. But we know that there will be a miracle because there always is. I think it's time to grow up. Literally, just grow up. Think independent. Do what you know is right. How can you lose? How could you lose? Here's another consideration. I've suggested many times for the last 50 years, Israel needs to come to the United Nations and say, we are the children of Israel. This land was given to us as an inheritance. No one can take it from us, and we can't give it away. It belongs to our grandchildren who are not yet born, so we can't give it away. And that would bring peace to the region. And people are always saying, oh, really? You're going to make that statement and everybody's going to surrender? Not going to happen. So here's the problem. Do we believe in truth? Does anybody really consider, should we say this or should we say that? Well, why don't you tell the truth? Does anybody consider that? Is the truth not powerful in its own right? We've gotten so used to living a Hollywood life. It's what sounds better. It's what people like. We lie constantly. We live lives of lies. Every advertisement is a lie, and it's permitted, encouraged. Lie better. Take this medicine. It'll help you, or it might kill you. There's no truth anywhere. There's no respect for truth. Is that realistic? If you tell the truth, are you better off?
Of course.
We used to tell our children, telling the truth is always the best policy. You'll be better off. We don't practice that. Ever.
It's amazing. Whenever I suggest what you're suggesting, it sends shivers down the spines of people. You can't say that. They'll go crazy. It's so incendiary, you know. The chosen people's the last thing we should be telling them. As if all the other stuff that we're screaming at them that's so blatantly obvious is working. It's like, are we not getting the message that they're not interested in the other stuff? They're not interested in the fact that nearly Israel's had the most incredible ratio of civilian to combatant ratio in the history of urban warfare, that we're a democracy, that we're trying to follow international law. They don't care. So it's like, you're getting so riled up by this, but why do you think your strategy's working?
Yeah, isn't it insulting, embarrassing, degrading that we have to argue with the world that we are not genocidal? Oh, but we're not. We're not. Don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
When they say you're out to commit genocide, yeah, maybe. Don't play that game anymore. They tell a lie, you have to make up your own lie in return. We're a democracy. No, we're not. Stop it already. We're a Jewish state. It's not a democracy or selective democracy. We're a Jewish state, and that's what we want to be, and that's what we're going to be. Is that dangerous to say? Or is that the only thing to say? Will we lose respect in the eyes of the world if we tell the truth? Anyone who thinks that telling the truth is counterproductive is in very bad shape. Truth means nothing anymore. That is the most dangerous part of this whole mess. We've lost all respect for truth. And by the way, the sages said that that's one of the symptoms of the coming of Mashiach. That before the coming of Mashiach, truth will be lost. Not there will be a lot of lies. There are always a lot of lies. But complete loss of truth, like it doesn't count, it's not useful, it is the most powerful thing in the world. It always has been.
Yeah.
and we're afraid to use the truth? Yeah, well, we think it's true. Nobody else. Is it really true, or is it just what you think? See, this inferiority complex goes very deep. What you know to be the absolute truth, you have no confidence in. That's damage.
It seems like part of the problem also is that we base a lot of our well, Israel's maybe perhaps basing some of its decisions on a secular morality or a Western morality. But what's interesting to note, though, and I wonder what you put this down to, is that Israel seemed to have more of this determination, being less intimidated by seeking the approval of others in prior wars, in our earlier history, when perhaps there was an even more militant secularism. Whereas today, I think we're seeing a real growth of the Israeli population becoming more connected to their Judaism. So how do you explain that difference? Is it maybe just not quite seeping into the higher political decision makers?
It's interesting that those people who become prime ministers railed against this when they were in the opposition. They would never give in. They would never make concessions. And then they become prime minister, and I don't know what happens to them. They
Makes you
turn to
wonder.
jelly. I mean, Sharon, Begin, what happened to them? These hawks.
What do you think it is?
I think we have great confidence when we speak to each other. But as soon as we're addressing the world, we fall apart. We can't say to the world what we say to each other.
It's understandable.
Yeah.
The world haven't been great to us.
Yes. Yeah. I understand why we're damaged. The question is, what do we do about the damage?
Mm.
But isn't that a serious moral dilemma? You don't trust the truth, then you've given up the game. Who lies best wins? That is very cynical. And since this war, everything I hear and see here in America is now so annoying. Everything is fake. Everything. We always knew politicians lie. Everybody lies, including the medical world. The scientists lie. Who's telling the truth? Nobody. Nobody. It's against policy. Don't tell the truth, you'll lose money. Don't tell the truth, you'll lose power.
Is there no principle in Judaism that in a world of exile, a world of darkness, a world of lies, there's an extent to which you have to play a bit of a cynical game? No?
No, you have to be aware that there are liars out there. You got to take that into consideration. But you have to stick to the truth. It's like the example of under Stalin. It was seriously dangerous to teach children Judaism. To say, well, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. We would all be dead. So what did we do? We played the cat and mouse game. We made the schools underground. As soon as there was a danger of it being discovered, we moved it to another location. We played that game with them, knowing how dangerous it is, right? But we never stopped teaching our children. So you have to be realistic of the world you're living in, but never at the expense of truth.
Mm.
Never compromise the truth. Is this not the ultimate challenge of our time?
I personally love it. I find it quite exciting. As in, the idea of stating these truths to the world. I mean, I personally think to be a Jew living right now in a world that's yearning for moral leadership, that has its eyes on Israel, and it's like the whole world spotlight is on us, and we have the chance to sort of write these final chapters of Jewish history in exile. It's like it's very exciting.
And it can be the turning point for all humans everywhere, because we're all in the same boat. We're victimized by falsehood, and we've sanctified falsehood.
Hmm.
I was talking to a guy, a little flipped out on religion, and he says, Jesus came to me last night and told me whatever. I said, how do you know it was him? He said, I look like him. You hear this? Oh, I know it was him. He looked like him. You know what he looks like? Everywhere you go in Christian world, some of the Christian world, statues and pictures and portraits and what does he look like? Scandinavian, tall with gorgeous head of hair, really athletic form, top shape. What if he was short, fat, and bald? Would he not be God anymore? What are the chances? What are the chances? No, he was not blonde, and no, he was not tall, and no, he was not fit. And he didn't wear a loincloth. The whole thing is just so Hollywood. The whole thing is Hollywood.
Mm.
And you bow to that thing that you know is fake. To the Muslims' credit, they never went for that.
Yeah. I think Hollywood has a lot to answer for on all kinds of issues in our world today. Rabbi, I want to get some reaction, do some reaction video content, but I just want to pick up on one final point you've made here. It's really to bring it back to the start. You were saying that our view of life as a people on a national level or global and personal level, we should be seeing life as there are 999 yeses and one no. But I still am not clear on what basis we should believe that, when there seems to be a great amount of good, but there's also quite a lot of pain and suffering in this world. So that just doesn't seem to be the. I'm cautious not to sound ungrateful, but it doesn't scream at me as being the overwhelming truth. And if we are, if God's ultimately running the show and he keeps handing out the no's, then the reality is that there are quite a few no's and lots of yeses as well.
I guess that's the problem with the analogy. In the analogy, there's just one no. In life, there's a no, there's a maybe, there's a not today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can get a little hurt, you can get very hurt, you can just be disappointed, you can just be frightened. Like the miracle of Purim. What happened to the Jewish people on Purim? Nothing.
Right.
There was a threat, and the threat never happened.
Right.
Okay, but the threat is also a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of a no.
Right.
So which no are we afraid of right now? Holocaust? No, we have an army.
Well, nuclear, God forbid, nuclear holocaust or something like that.
So it's a whole new no that never happened before. So there's
The
just one.
Holocaust didn't happen before till it happened.
True. Did anybody sit around worrying about a Holocaust happening? Of course not, because it never happened before.
Right.
So to come up with possible scenarios of disaster, that's called paranoid. So the one no that we need not worry about is, God forbid, a world without Jews. That's not even 1 in 1,000. Why are we so sure of that? Has there ever been a world without Jews?
Is it possible though that we lost 1/3 of our people? Is it possible that such a dramatic loss could take place again? Because that is still a very intimidating and scary possibility, even if we know we're going to survive, but it could just be 10 of us, right?
It is possible. So how do you handle the possibility of disaster? How do you handle that? Well, you got to assess it. What is the likelihood, not the possibility? The word possible can be very intimidating because everything is possible. So what? We don't let possibilities dictate our behavior. Probabilities. If it's not probable, then you don't worry about it. That's a healthy frame of mind. So I think we need to focus on the real issue. The real issue is not even life and death. The real issue is life worth fighting for? And one of the ugliest conversations online, this guy is asking people in the street about what they think should happen in Israel. So this one guy asks this woman, what do you want to see happen? Gaza has to be given back to the Palestinians, and all of Israel has to be given back to the Palestinians. And he says, "Oh, so where should the Jews go?" You know what her answer is? To hell.
To hell.
How do you like that for an attitude, right? That is so not scary. It's so distasteful. Can people actually be this evil? I guess. So should we be worried about that? And Jews should just not be anywhere in this world at all? No. That is not something we worry about. On the contrary, the rest of the world should worry. They may disappear. We're not disappearing. There is no question in my mind that 5 years from now, there will be no memory of a Palestinian people, because there are no such people. There's no such nation. There's no such country. There never was. And yet, we're caught up in this lie up to our nostrils. There's no truth to the whole thing from beginning to end.
Yep.
Peace process, two-state solution. It is the biggest lie, the biggest fantasy fabrication. Why do we entertain it? Why do we go along with it?
Well, it sounds like Netanyahu is starting to stop going along with it now.
He kind of suggests it, but not the way
Yeah.
that it would be effective. Even making a statement that this war will go on through 2024. What are you saying? That you can't clean it up faster? Of course you can. Why will it take another year? God forbid. Why do you make statements like that? What is to be gained by that? Why didn't he say right off the start, return every hostage or there'll be nothing left of Gaza in 2 days? What a chutzpah. You kidnap kids and then dictate what we should do?
Well, then I heard people saying, well, if we're not careful, then we might end up killing the hostages, which then creates, as you said, a hostage industry.
So do you have to show how weak you are? Of course you're worried about the hostages. So you bow to them? That makes it better? You give them a ceasefire? Because they'll exchange it for 2 of them, 6 of them. Are you playing this game with them? Wipe them out for kidnapping alone. Like our ancestors did when they kidnapped Dinah. It never happened again.
Yeah.
There was no one left to do it.
Yeah. What do you think Israel's policy should be with regard to the Arabs that are living in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, let alone Gaza? Because you're saying we've got to stop indulging in this. The peace process basically has been a sham, and it's the whole concept is really based on falsehood. So what do you think Israel should
The
say?
West Bank is Israel.
So what do you do with all the people living there?
You tell them either you live in Israel or you get out of here because this is Israel.
But you
It's
have
not
but they are deeply indoctrinated because the Palestinian Authority control them towards deep hatred, and you could end up with a severe problem internally in Israel of many citizens who are
we have a
sorry.
severe.
I know, but it could be even worse once you give them all Israeli citizenship.
Well, then don't. Throw them out. If they're a threat to your citizens, throw them out. You don't accept a threat that hangs over your head every single day. There's something seriously wrong with a country in which your citizens, if they make the wrong turn and go into the wrong neighborhood, are going to get killed.
Of course. Do you think they could become peaceful citizens like, many Israeli Arabs? Do you think it's possible they could be?
You would have to be very strict and very selective. If there's a slight possibility that they're anti-Israel, then get them out of Israel. It's as simple as that. And that's not a right, that's an obligation. How do you let your citizens live with that kind of a threat right next door?
Yeah.
Is it irresponsible?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm convinced that if Israel had that policy, all those who want to live in Israel would abide by it.
Like Israeli Arabs do.
And they would not demand citizenship or representation in the Knesset, which is absurd.
what you're saying would be to so many people so inflammatory. They'd say this is disgraceful. It's not respecting of these Arabs' human rights and the basic democratic principles. They'd be so inflamed by what you're saying. I heard someone say in one of the settlements in Judea and Samaria, they said, you know what? Yes, it might not be perfect that we're offering every single person that's living in Israel the same rights. Sounds pretty similar to what it's like for non-Muslims in every single other Arab country, and we have to put Israel's Jewishness above everything else.
Basically, what they're saying is, what a chutzpah! You want a land of your own?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I want a land where I can be safe. Is that asking too much? Everybody said they thought that giving Gaza to the Palestinians would turn it into the Singapore of
The
the
Middle
East.
East. Yeah.
Why can't Israel be Singapore? You're not afraid to walk the streets in Singapore in the middle of the night.
Right.
You're not even afraid of a loiterer or a litterer. Never mind a mugger. They don't litter in Singapore. Remember that guy who got caned for spitting out the bubble gum on the street or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, why can't we be the Singapore of the Middle East?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? How our enemies, in some ways, push us more towards our destiny, in a sense, that because it's tragic that it took October 7th to wake so many Jews up, but I think, as you said, a lot of them have stopped feeling now this sense of we need to get people's approval when they're just being anti-Semitic and holding double standards. And similarly, the Palestinian refusal to accept a two-state solution. Imagine if they had, the problem in some ways be a lot more challenging and dangerous. Their refusal is because actually this really is the Jewish people's land, and that's going to be the destiny that has to unfold.
Their refusal comes from a very deep-seated belief that isn't always voiced, but it's there. They consider themselves the descendants of Ishmael, and therefore the land is theirs by inheritance. To suggest anything else is insulting. So to say, oh, you want to land a country of your own, we'll give you. Oh, no, you don't give me. This is an inheritance. I am the descendant of Ishmael, the older son of Abraham. It's a matter of pride, it's a matter of dignity, and it's a matter of belief. Are they the descendants of Ishmael? No, they're not. There's not a single Palestinian who can trace his family tree back to Ishmael. Not one. But they believe that they inherit because they act like Abraham.
Did Ishmael inherit, though? I thought Ishmael doesn't inherit.
That's exactly right. And that's a declaration of war.
Right. But I'm saying even if they were a direct descendant of Ishmael, would that make a difference?
It would not, because God said, Ishmael will be a great nation, but he is not your heir. Yitzchak inherits.
How was Ishmael able to make peace with his brothers and the family of Israel at the time?
He was Abraham's son. And the truth mattered to him. When he realized that he is not going to be the heir, he accepted it. The truth is powerful. And to not think that is giving up the ship.
So what is Ishmael's role? At Ishmael's best, in a messianic perfect world, what could be Ishmael's role?
Well, if you look at it in biblical terms, Ishmael was jealous of Yitzchak until he
Isaac.
realized, huh?
I'm saying Isaac, just for our viewers.
Yeah, Isaac. Uh, when you're jealous of your brother who is the chosen or the greatest or whatever, what alternative? Let's say we're brothers, or at least cousins, which we're not, but to be nice about it, let's say we're brothers and we have sibling rivalry and we're fighting over the inheritance, and Ishmael realizes he's not inheriting because Yitzchak is special. So what's the alternative to the rivalry and the jealousy? The alternative is pride. To be proud to be Yitzchak's brother.
But what do you do with that pride?
You become the greatest supporter. Like if Einstein had a brother who was not the brightest guy in town, would he not be proud to tell the world that he is Albert Einstein's brother? Would
But
he
you know
not
what? Sometimes
promote?
they could promote, but as long you need to. Everyone's, as you say, your perhaps most central teaching of all. We all need to feel needed and necessary, like we're playing an important role.
Exactly. So the question would be, how can I be of service to Yitzchak? What
Right.
do you need from me?
Right.
Whatever it is, it'll be my honor to do it.
And I'm sure if they can put their passion in the right direction, it could be a wonderful thing.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And I am convinced that they will turn out to be the heroes.
Wow. Wow.
And they will remove the mosque so that the temple can be rebuilt.
You heard it here first.
They will. They will. And that would be better than blowing it up. Blowing it up doesn't mean you know the truth. But if they take it down so that we can build the temple, that's being truthful. And we need to get the truth back into center stage. The truth is not only good, it's everything. False is not only bad, it's nothing. It's false.